Welcome in to another edition of In Touch with Indiana Sports, powered by thehoosier.com. John Alden with you, as always, and it is a pleasure to have you on board for this week's episode. Of course, going to be a ton of reaction from Indiana football's record-breaking, history-making, whatever verbiage you want to use to describe it, their win over Ohio State in the Big Ten Championship to propel them to a number one seed, likely give Fernando Mendoza Indiana's first Heisman Trophy winner, a number of other things that we could get into, but have probably already been mentioned by every other person that has talked about Saturday's win already. It's been an incredible ride, this Indiana football team, just like last year, but just a step ahead at this point, right? We have now seen things that, even though last year we didn't think were possible, this is another level of ridiculousness in the best way. And Mitchell, Paige, and I are going to break it all down from our perspectives, our unique perspectives. Of course, he was there. He was able to make it to the game, and he'll share that side of things. And of course, I'll share some of my reactions from, just watching it and experiencing it as not a casual fan, but as a regular Joe fan. That's the best way to, I guess, kind of mention it or frame it, right? So we'll get into all of that here in just a moment, but just want to let you know what else is coming in this show. That is going to be most of today's show. I am going to share some thoughts on the other side of that conversation about Indiana basketball, some of the issues that they have experienced over the last couple of games, and also we'll wrap things up as always by checking out what's going on with Indiana women's volleyball and women's basketball. So plenty of things to talk about as always. So we'll get into all that later on, but in just a second, we'll begin our conversation with Mitchell. But before we do that, we're going to welcome on a new sponsor to the Hoosier on 3, and that is Big Game Football Factory. Indiana made history by making the college football playoff once again. Now here's your chance to bring history home with Big Game Football Factory's official limited edition CFP football. I don't have it today, but next episode, I will have this for you, and I'll show you what this thing looks like. But this exclusive football is a symbol of excellence, built for the biggest stage in the sport and capturing the pride, passion, and performance of playoff football. Only 12 programs earn the right to hold one each year, and now is your chance to have one of your own. Handcrafted in the United States, these authentic game day footballs are made specifically and approved for on-field play during the CFP with a certificate of authenticity. Every detail is stitched, shaped, and finished by hand using the same craftsmanship trusted by the teams on the field by Big Game Football Factory, the largest American-owned football factory. Customized to meet each quarterback's specific preferences, so you'll get the football made exactly the way that Fernando Mendoza likes to play. This is a must-have for collectors, alumni, students, and diehard fans. Don't just witness history, own history. You can now get your exclusive football only at BigGameUSA.com. I'll say that website one more time, BigGameUSA.com. And next time, I'll try to have a photo of what this looks like in case you don't look it up yourself. But if you go to that website, BigGameUSA.com, you'll see exactly what I am talking about. So glad to have Big Game Football Factory on board during the college football playoff section of this season, and I'll be telling you about them the next several episodes, of course. So looking forward to having them on along the ride for this Indiana Hoosiers football playoff run once again. So without further ado, let's begin our reactions to this past Saturday's Big Ten championship game between Indiana and Ohio State. Joining me now, it's Mitchell Paige, as always. Who would have thunk, right? On In Touch with Indiana Sports. Welcome back. We are here. First of all, I'm wearing something. I don't normally do this. I'm wearing an IU football jersey on today's, at least this segment of the show. I feel like that's kind of homerish, but right now I don't care. People know I'm a homer. People know you're a homer. You're an alum. but we just experienced something. You and I and everybody else who's an Indiana football fan just experienced something over the weekend that had never been done before. They won an outright Big Ten title in a championship game format, 13-10, against a team they hadn't beaten in 30 years. So many firsts happened from the result of that game. It is unbelievable. But Mitchell, you're the man of the hour. You were in attendance. I want to start just by getting your initial thoughts on everything that took place. Not everything at once, but just initial thoughts on how things played out.
Yeah, I'll talk about the environment first. My voice, if it's any indication, it was an electrifying building. I don't think I've ever seen a team have to go silent count on a neutral field, but Ohio State played a majority of the second half on a silent count. And I can't even, I was in a really cool little spot, just a bunch of IU fans. When the game ended, it felt like we were all just hugging each other and crying. It was just really powerful. And God, this team is just tough, man. They are tough. Everything that we thought about them, that I feel like if you watched Indiana, you knew about them, but they're just so tough physically up front on both sides of the line of scrimmage. That's what national championship caliber teams do. They kind of just beat you up. And boy, did Indiana beat up Ohio State, especially on defense.
Yeah, I think Indiana fans knew that Indiana had the defense, the ability to do what they did to Ohio State's offensive line. Most of the national, and rightfully so, it had never been done before, at least Indiana versus Ohio State. They had never dominated Indiana or dominated the Buckeyes on the line the way that they did. And to see that happen, and it didn't happen immediately. It was a slow burn. It's something we've talked about all year long. Indiana just kind of takes bits and pieces from you very, very slowly until they inevitably squeeze the life out of you until you have nothing left. And that's what that defensive line, really just not even just the line, Elijah Hardy, you could name D'Angelo Ponce, anybody on the defense, whether it's the corners, whether it's the safeties, the line, whatever, everybody plays hard. Everybody plays in position. In Ohio State, nothing was easy for them during that game.
No, and there was, I mean, the most apparent thing for the entire game was just how good Jeremiah Smith is. I mean, he is dominant, and you can't really neutralize Jeremiah Smith. But what you can do is neutralize everybody else and put a lot of pressure on the quarterback. So now his reads speed up, and he can't get his feet under him. Jeremiah Smith is unstoppable. D'Angelo Ponce did an unbelievable job in coverage, especially down near the goal line on a lot of those out-breaking routes that they like to throw, to let him just go get it. But when you get that much pressure on the quarterback and speed him up, we talked about it last week. That's what I thought was going to be the most important thing that Indiana could do, even if it didn't result in sacks, which it did, but just getting him to speed up in his progression. It just felt like he was all out of sorts. And when you're out of sorts, the timing gets off. That's how you neutralize those dominant players on the outside. So, I mean, just a masterpiece game plan. And the execution that we've talked about all year that they just never seem to miss. They had some penalties. I'm not going to spend any time thinking or talking about the referees in this game, but they had some penalties that were or they weren't. And
very strange. The referees would not call a hold on either team, but they would call some silly things that weren't holds, I felt like.
Yeah, I think there was a ton of holding on both lines of scrimmage on offense. A ton.
And kudos to the consistency for both teams on not favoring one team over the other.
Yeah, and whatever. That is what it is. But when the moment shines, the Hoosiers show up. And it was always someone different, although I guess Charlie Becker just keeps showing up. I can't remember who called that. I always forget. But was it me?
I think it was you, right?
It might have been me.
You had to be, and this is literally no joke. And I don't consume a ton of IU media just because I feel like that would be so self-absorbent, and I would end up repeating myself from other people's takes on things. But you have to be the first person that really came out and before he had even made a huge impact, said that Charlie Becker was going to be somebody that would be a big deal.
Yeah, I think it was after Indiana State. So I'm gonna have to go back and watch that episode just to confirm. Um,
Because you
but
told me that was the game you and I were at, and you pointed that out to me in the
so
stadium.
so it was before that I had started this Charlie Becker, whatever. I am an idiot, and sometimes you just hit. I say a lot of stupid things. That was a hit though. This
It
kid
was
is
a hit.
he's phenomenal. It was also just announced for recording on Monday night. Just announced Mendoza, deservedly so, in New York for the Heisman Trophy. I think you'll see just as we get going and the team gets better and better and better over the coming years. That's going to be maybe not for Heisman. Heisman is so tough and so unique, but more and more Indiana players going to New York for that award show. It's just an unbelievable time to be a fan of Indiana, and what I was expecting to feel, which was just emotional as they ran onto the field for the first time. I had no idea. I cried like a 5-year-old.
And
Probably
who
like
were you
Maggie.
with or can you say who you were at the game with, or was it just yourself?
It was I was there with a really cool group of people, lifelong Indiana fans that I've known for a long time, involved with the program on a pretty personal level. Not former players, but very involved in the program, and uh, you could sense the passion from everyone around. It was just such a cool environment all day. It was awesome.
And so I guess you were talking about as they come out of the tunnel, and I'm sure you've gone back and watched the broadcast at this point. That's definitely
This
a
is going to
unique thing to
shock
do.
you.
If you've not,
I have not watched. It's actually as soon as we're done recording, my dad video or taped it on YouTube TV.
okay. So you're
So
gonna
that
watch
is
the TV version of it for the first time. I think you'll really enjoy just the overall presentation. And I know some people aren't the biggest fans of Gus Johnson and Joel. I think Joel Klatt is pretty universally enjoyed by most people, and maybe
yeah.
I'm just saying that because I enjoy him.
I
But
agree.
Gus Johnson can be very, he's not everybody's cup of tea. But
Polarizing.
I think that most people, maybe I'm wrong, if you have not listened to that call, like you're about ready to, I think most people will think that I think is one of Gus Johnson's best calls of an Indiana game that he's done. And hopefully you'll enjoy it if you haven't already. I'm sure most
Yeah.
people listening to this have already, of course, watched the game, unless you were also there in person. But let me go ahead and ask you this now. So the first half was definitely it felt like a very typical Indiana versus Ohio State matchup. Whether Indiana was really good in the past or competitive, Indiana was just kind of, getting field goals, not getting all the way that they were eventually able to in the second half. How did it kind of feel like things were playing out in those first two quarters from your perspective?
I was just super impressed by both teams. Um, really good defense. I don't care who you are on offense. It's just hard to get momentum and rhythm when you have that many just really good players flying around. Neither team ran the ball super well. I think Indiana finished with like 115 yards and Ohio State was around 60 or something, but Indiana also had like a 35-yard run in there, an explosive play. It was just a field position battle. And honestly, I felt really good because last year you knew kind of right away that we couldn't hold up at the line of scrimmage and we were going to need some big plays, and Ohio State just doesn't give those up. But our ability to stand up to them in the trenches, it told a very different story than years past. So you went into halftime. Obviously, you would have liked to make the field goal, whatever. Nico Radicic hasn't missed, I think, since he was born. So we'll cut him some slack there. You would have liked 10-9, but you felt like you were in a really good spot. And they handled those, what do they call that, the middle eight?
That's right, the middle eight. They
handled
absolutely
that.
they didn't dominate the middle eight, but I don't think
No.
Ohio State did anything in the middle eight.
No, they managed that to perfection. When you're on the wrong side of the middle eight, you really just try to survive and don't let the game get away, which is what happened last year. I think in the middle eight last year, you had the fumbled punt and then the punt return, and then they scored right out of halftime, and now all of a sudden the game's blown wide open. So things just can get out of hand. Indiana's done that to teams all year long where they score right at the end of the half, go score again right at the beginning of the half, and then you're playing catch up and you don't really have a chance. So that's the only thing that worries you. I mean, Ohio State is obviously super explosive and can score on you in a lot of ways. And Indiana met the challenge as they've done all year. They just met the challenge at the key positions when it mattered. And I watched college football playoff release or whatever, and I'm not scared of anybody, and they should be scared of us.
No, and then this is something I was definitely planning on mentioning at some point too. Indiana's had numerous moments, not only just this year, but the last 2 years in general with Kurt Signetti, where it felt like that they achieved a different level of respect overall. That before said moment, there were certain people who were they would refuse to give Indiana whatever kind of respect that might have been. This win and performance in general, not just getting the win, because you can win in some fluky ways. You could argue that the 27-yard field goal that was shanked by the Ohio State kicker is, I mean, that's luck. And from the Indiana perspective, like that doesn't happen.
No.
But either way, sometimes it's like Signetti said, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. But Indiana gets the win. They look good doing it against a team that I don't think anybody ever thought they were going to knock off, to finish this losing streak they've been on. 30 years, 30 wins, whatever it might have been for Ohio State in a row since 1988. And they do it on the biggest stage possible that's not a national championship game. I think this was the moment where I don't think you could ask a single national analyst what they would think of Indiana and have any sort of question marks about them anymore, which is, I mean, they're the only 13-0 team. They're the top seed in this upcoming college football playoff bracket. And I think it's still tough, even for Indiana fans, to wrap their minds around this reality. I was talking about Joel Klatt earlier. I was listening to his show. He said, imagine telling an Indiana fan the day after Kurt Signetti's hired, or maybe it's the day that he does the pep rally or whatever, where he says Purdue sucks, all that sort of thing, that they would be the number one they'd be in the Rose Bowl in the college football playoff and being favored against potentially an Alabama. Like, that is a wild thing. If you would have been told that 2 years ago, not a single person would know what to do with that statement.
Yeah, and I think there's a chance that they're favored by a touchdown against either team that they play. Like, they're for real. And there's a lot of games where, you strike gold and everything goes your way. That's not what happened on Saturday. They threw a pick inside their own 20. They missed a field goal. They let Jeremiah Smith have some big plays. Or they didn't let him. He just did, because that's what he does. But they stood up. That's the most impressive thing to me. They don't have to be perfect. They're better than everybody on their B-plus day. And I think the only people that we have left to, at least if my Twitter has anything to say about it, Georgia fans are the last wall to
Georgia fans
superpower them, because Georgia fans, I still got to see it. We're still Georgia.
Okay.
I can't wait to play them in the national championship. Although they probably get beat by Ohio State, and we'll have to do.
And
this
that's the thing;
again.
it may very well be a rematch, like when we've talked about that before too. But this is another interesting thing. Like, obviously, Ohio State made it difficult for Indiana throughout the entirety of the game to do a lot of good stuff on offense. They were able to pick them apart slowly in certain aspects, and of course, get that big play that eventually led to that touchdown from Surratt. But I think this is a fair statement. I don't think Ohio State exposed Indiana in any way. They still don't have any glaring weakness. Like, there's things that they could be better at in certain aspects, but you can't pinpoint and say, okay, this is how Georgia can expose Indiana, or this is how Texas A&M would expose Indiana. I don't really think they have a glaring weakness, and that's why they're the best team in the country right now.
There's no formula. No one has come up with any formula to beat Indiana. They can play you in a track meet. They can beat you in your own building. They can score 30 points in your building when you're the number 3 team in the country. Sorry, Oregon. They can beat you in a dogfight when you got better talent at a lot of positions. Talent. Air quotes if you're listening. Talent. They can beat you in any way. They can play any style of game, any pace of game, and they find plays. They find a way to win, and that's dangerous. As I mentioned before, I would imagine that there's about 11 other fan bases that are enjoying their time that they have in the college football playoff, because if they see that cream and crimson coming, that's going to be about it for them.
Which, by the way, every team that could, or because there's, of course, it's one of three teams that will be, or two of the three teams will be in the Rose Bowl. Every single team in that line of the bracket
colors
is the same color.
Same colors. Yeah, it's going to be awesome. I wasn't sure if I was going to talk about this. Actually, we said we weren't going to talk about it, but I've obviously never been out there, and I'm getting the chance to go out to the Rose Bowl. I cannot wait to be there all day, see the parade, take in the environment, because that's as a Big Ten fan, that's the epitome of college football to me as an 8-year-old or whatever. I watched Miami play in the national championship in the Rose Bowl when I was 5 years old. That's second favorite team, so obviously I was pretty pumped as a young pup. But it's the peak of college football. That's you talk about the history, the greatest moments. Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, just some awesome moments at the Rose Bowl. I'm pretty sure, wasn't the Texas USC game, Vince Young, wasn't that at the Rose Bowl?
I don't know, actually.
I think it was. If it wasn't, don't correct me. I'm going to think it was. Just all kinds of football history in that place. You already went out there last year and smashed somebody. Just a team wearing a different jersey goes smash.
Well, the famous quote from Cignetti is, "We're just playing in an old stadium to kick somebody's ass." That's what he said at Big Ten football media days. Eons 100%. Ago, it seems like.
That feels like a lifetime ago. We are just a couple of days removed from the 2-year anniversary of his hiring.
Yeah, I know we've already done the look back on if you would have told anybody that this is where this team would be right now, nobody would believe you, or they wouldn't know how to react.
Yeah.
But I do want to get back into some more reactions from the game specifically.
Come on.
So Indiana gets the lead in the second half. They're the first team to really get aggressive. I mean, and both teams had taken some shots downfield, but they hadn't really done anything with them. They get the deep pass to Charlie Becker, the first of a few, by the way, we should mention. And then he follows that up. Fernando Mendoza follows that up with a nice back shoulder throw to Elijah Surratt to get the lead 13-10. And of course, that's the final score of the game. What was your reaction, and how did things kind of change? How did you feel like everything was changing in Lucas Oil Stadium at that point?
Well, my personal reaction, I mentioned I was with some people that are pretty connected to the program. These are people, that's a bunch of doctors, surgeons, and me, along with about 3, maybe 4 of their sons and their sons' friends, had our shirts off, which is a pretty wild move, waving the shirts around. I couldn't even control myself. I went absolutely bananas, and I think everybody else did too. I've seen that play so many times from Elijah Surratt where the ball is just perfect and it's unstoppable. When the ball's right there, he has such an unbelievable ability to maneuver his body and completely shield the DB so it's his or nobody's. You've just seen it so many times, and it's almost like this crescendo of back shoulder fades, and now we still got 3 more games to go, and I'm sure we'll see some more of it. But it was a play that we've seen so many times from Surratt, and it was just executed perfect. Obviously, a fantastic ball from Fernando, but you could see it as soon as you saw that expansion fade out of the slot from Surratt, and you saw Fernando kind of look him off. You could feel it coming. You could feel it building, that he was going to throw it. And then the ball felt like it was in the air for 10 hours. And then the place went absolutely bananas, man. It was – I've never been in an Indiana environment that was like that. Memorial Stadium gets rocking, but this was another level that I can't wait for fans to feel and take back next year, because, man, if we could have that every weekend, that is serious, serious stuff.
Yeah, I definitely wish that I had the finances where I could have been at the Big Ten championship game, as I'm sure many of you listening wish you had those as well.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, it's still, to even have this moment from any perspective, it's absolutely insane. So I do want to move forward to the next significant moment of of the game. And I really, the last significant moment before the end of the game, I believe, and that was Ohio State gets 4th and 2, 4th and 1, whatever it might have been. They'd already missed it going forward on 4th and 1 earlier. It was the quarterback sneak that I thought was a first down, just not paying. And whenever I know my thoughts are going all over the place right here, just because my brain it's going back to watching the game and how everything was just all over the place. But let me rewind here for a second. Whenever Ohio State goes for the quarterback sneak, and I think they ruled it a first down, they decide to review it. I remember looking over at my wife. I said, why are they reviewing this? Like he easily got that. And then the camera shows that his knee is down before he crosses the line of scrimmage. And again, this is why they have replay, because idiots like me just assume like, oh, okay, it's first down, move forward. That was a definitive stop in the game. Then they do it again in a bit of a different fashion to force the field goal attempt, the 27-yard field goal attempt that I believe the Ohio State kicker's name is Jake Fielding. He trots out there, and I learned this afterward. He had missed a kick last year against Michigan in the regular season. I don't know how close it was, but now he's had a second crucial missed kick from I don't know how much closer it could have been. Of course, that right hash can't be that easy of an angle to do, especially in a pressure situation. But he smokes it left, and I remember my jaw just dropped because I'm like, Indiana practically has this in their back pocket if they can take care of business the rest of the way. So back to you, Mitchell. You see that shanked field goal, and I want to know your perspective. Where were you at in relation to where everything was kicked? Could you even tell if that was missed from your angle initially?
Not really. I was like at the 45-yard line.
Okay.
So you couldn't really see, but you could tell it was moving hard left. And then obviously the reaction does it all, and place went crazy again. But I want to come back to the 4th and 1 on the QB sneak, because everyone in the building was in the same boat as you. They weren't showing the replay on the screens. We didn't know what was even happening. We didn't know. And the PA system, for whatever reason, wasn't great from the refs. You couldn't hear. Maybe it was just loud in there, and I wasn't paying attention very well. But you couldn't really hear what was happening. You kind of gather that they're looking at something, but you don't really know what's going on. And then all of a sudden they say he was short, and we still didn't really know how. I never saw a replay until after the game what actually happened. So that was a stunning moment. But I want to go back to the play right before the kick, the Elijah Hardy pass breakup, and why it's so important that Indiana got pressure on Julian Sayin for the duration of the game. When you watch the play unfold, it looks like they're trying to just throw that little flat route to the running back or tight end or whoever's in the flat. He's open for a split second. You can throw that ball and probably a first down, you go score, probably win the game. But even on that, this is a quick hitting play. Even on that play, you have pressure that kind of forces his rollout a little bit deeper than he wants it to go. So he's thinking he's late, and there's no way that he can get to that flat. It's going to be covered. So you see him look, and he hesitates. And then for Elijah Hardy to come all the way across the formation and break that up, it was a great ball from Sayin. It's a good route from the tight end or whoever he threw it to, and just a better play by Indiana. And it's great. Like it always seems to come down to one or two plays, but it's the course of the game that directly impacts those one or two plays. And that was no more apparent than the half bit of pressure on Sayin. If you hadn't been getting pressure on him, his timer, his internal clock is slow. He's seeing the field. It feels comfortable. But you shake him up just a little. Now he gets a little deep. He's thinking, oh, crap, I'm late. You hesitate. Now he's covered. Now you got to throw the back kind of across your body. And I agreed with Ryan Day's decision to kick a field goal.
Oh, I thought it was a no-brainer because you hadn't found success. I mean, neither team had much success. It would have been a big gamble to go for it. And I mean, again, it's the same thing as missing the field goal, I guess. But it looks more boneheaded when you think the field goal is a gimme type of situation.
Right. Exactly. It's not like they had a 55-yard field goal or go for it on 4th and 1. You probably, I would guess some of the guys on offense didn't even watch the field goal. They were probably talking about overtime and what their plan was going to be, or if they got the ball back, how they were going to go get a field goal to win it. That's probably what was happening on the sideline. So you can imagine some of the shakeup that you get. Wait, what? You missed it? Are you kidding me? But yeah, I mean, once that happens, I think we needed like 2 or 3 first downs.
Yeah, there was 2:47 on the clock.
Yeah,
Ohio State, I believe, had maybe all 3 timeouts.
All 3
at that
timeouts
point.
and the 2-minute. So I guess it depended on when you got the first down, but the cojones to throw a one-on-one fade to I think he's probably a starting wide receiver. I think he started this game, the Big Ten championship, but to just throw it up and say, go get it, go make a play. Unbelievable ball from Mendoza. But you have guys like that, and a lot of things are possible. It's a stunning play call. Stunning.
It didn't surprise me. I told Alicia, my wife, I said, they're going to throw it here. They want to put this away right now. I didn't know they were going to get it, but I was very convinced they were going to throw it.
I was kind of agreeing. I was hoping they would throw it, but my guess is you probably want to make sure that Ohio State uses another timeout. They had already used 2 timeouts. Use the other one. Count on they have the 2-minute warning, whatever. But just in case, like we can't give them another timeout with an incompletion. Yeah. Shows what I know. They let that thing rip. And Charlie Becker's celebration, the cover your face, and Jonathan Brady right behind it. Have you seen this video?
I don't know. If I have, I don't have the context of it. I may have just seen it in passing.
I think it was actually on the big post earlier in the game, but his little hand over his face. There's a picture of him with his hand over his face like he did against Penn State. And then Jonathan Brady's doing the same pose right behind him, hand over his – oh, it is such a clean picture. It's just a bunch of guys that believe in each other. It's so cool to watch how excited everyone is for everyone else. You'd listen to the post-game interviews, and all anyone talks about is how good everybody else is. Elijah Surratt was that way. They talked to Pat Coogan. Obviously, Mendoza has just done that all year, talking about everybody but himself. Hemby. It's a team, and that's a dangerous thing, especially in today's world with all the money flying around. It's very easy for ego to creep in, and they just haven't let it happen. I have no question that Cignetti's little joke about getting these guys humble in 3.5 weeks. My guess is they're already humble, and they're already getting treatment in the weight room, probably watching tape, working on individual stuff because they know how much is in front of them. I mean, this is a legitimate national champion favorite that's in Bloomington, Indiana.
Yeah, I guess, well, since you mentioned favorite, it is kind of aggravating, and I get it at the same time, though. But it is aggravating that Ohio State is still the betting favorite to win the national title right now. I know why. It's because they've been there before. They bounced back last year from a loss and won the whole thing. I get it. Indiana's never done this sort of thing. I totally understand. But it just aggravates me for some reason. It's because they're the number 1 team in the country. That's why it aggravates me. But either way.
I get
Last thing I want, or I'll let you comment on that if you want to. And then I was
just going to say, I get it. If you're the sports books, you probably agree. My guess is if they played again, Ohio State would still be favored. And
absolutely,
that's okay. That is what it is. All Indiana does is just go on to the field of play and win. That's all they keep doing. So until further notice, if you can still get Indiana at plus whatever 300 to win the national championship, I'm not sure if you're betting folk. If you are, I'd probably throw a couple dollars on that because you're gonna be rich.
You might be convincing me to do that. I've always refused to bet on big bets like that on Indiana. But either way, last thing I want to say on Charlie Becker. I texted you this, and maybe it was in the moment, but as of right now, I still believe it. Charlie Becker is the best wide receiver Indiana has. He may not be on the depth chart as wide receiver 1 or 2. That's always going to be Surratt or Cooper. Charlie Becker is the best wide receiver in the room. And maybe just because he seems to have the build, or at least the physicality more so of an NFL style wide receiver from the other two. Maybe I'm ignorant to say something like that. That's just how it looks from the outside, watching it from a TV vantage point. And he just comes down with balls, man. There's a reason he's got over 100 receiving yards, and I think 3 or 4 games in the back half of the season. He wasn't really utilized much before that just because of said depth chart, but he is capitalized. Anytime Cooper's been out, Surratt's been out and they have to lean on him more, he does way more than you'd ever expect him to do.
Yeah, he's phenomenal. I would agree that he is the best prospect that I think Indiana has. He's big, fast, strong, makes competitive plays. It's hard. Surratt is pretty good. And
Yeah,
Omar
and of course, there's a bigger sample size on it. Maybe I'm basing it solely off of NFL. Maybe that's what I should have said.
Yeah,
best NFL prospect in the receiver room.
Yeah, but I mean, you just have so many guys. Like all he's done is made the however many headed monster have one more head. I think EJ Williams has made some huge plays for Indiana this year, and that's a guy nobody really talks about anymore. But he's been phenomenal. He had a couple big catches this last weekend that are like 2nd and 5, 3rd and 6, 1st and 10 for a first down. I mean, it's everybody. They can beat you from everywhere. Nowakowski on the 4th down. It's a huge play to break that tackle and get the first down. Huge. And they just continually do that. Hemby out of the backfield. As we mentioned, there's no recipe. Ohio State, I mean, Caden Curry was an absolute monster. A monster. There are maybe, I'm thinking Ruben Bain at Miami is maybe as close game wrecking as Caden Curry was on Saturday. But teams just don't have the talent that Ohio State has, and they still couldn't figure out how to win. Held Indiana to 13 points. You have to win. And they still got beat. I just don't know. If I'm a coach and I'm game planning, I'm watching Indiana, you watch the course of the season, they'll watch every game that Indiana's played. And I can remember when I was in school, you'd have a couple clips from an opponent every year. Ohio State down to whoever you were playing, doesn't matter. There's some little, okay, this safety creeps on this coverage, on this situation, we can get them. There just isn't that. There's never a we can get them on offense or defense. You kind of just have to hold on for dear life and hope something crazy happens, which is not really where you want to be if you're trying to win a football game.
I realize I'm backtracking with this next question. It can be brief because this is just something that you made me think of when you're talking about Caden Curry. That opening hit on Mendoza, how worried were you that was worse than it actually was?
I almost died in my seat.
I sound like an old man laughing right now due to this cold that I'm getting over.
I take that back. When it first happened and I thought I saw him laying motionless, I almost passed away. But then I saw Alberto getting warmed up, and I started to get a little fired up. Like, all right, young blood, let's see what you got.
I wasn't as much as you want Fernando in the game. I was not off the jump worried about Alberto and his an inability of any sort.
No, I think if it was anybody but Ohio State, cool. But you needed the poise that Fernando comes with, and Alberto just hasn't been there yet. Yeah. So there wasn't going to be that same level of calm, cool, collected that you needed to make the throw to Charlie Becker to ice the game. But I thought it would have been an interesting look into the future. See if we were going to bring in a portal guy, which I'm sure we will. But that
would have been a hell of an audition if he had to play the entire game right there.
We're going to find out. But, I mean, Fernando, just tough. In the stadium, it looked like, how is that not he should be ejected for life. It looked like complete targeting of a defensive player. And I'm not talking about head-to-head. Everybody's like, well, he didn't even hit him in the head. It wasn't head-to-head. It's not the rule. Not the rule. It's a defenseless player, and you're launching at the head and neck area. It looked like he hit him like right here, which is the head and neck area, your collarbone area. But it was more on the shoulder. It was not targeting. But I was furious in my seat. I was going insane. I would have fought Caden Curry on the spot. On the spot. I would have lost, but we would have been going to war for our boys. And that the only person that goes to war harder than me is everybody that was playing. Those guys, man, they just battle. It's so exciting. I could talk about this. How long have we gone? We going 35 minutes?
What's crazy, it's 35, and there's one. I want to get to the end of the game, and then I want to talk briefly about what's to come, and then we'll wrap this thing up.
Okay, then I'll shut up.
So let's fast back forward to just Indiana does it. Julian's saying it's 2 seconds left. They take care of business on defense. It's over. Indiana wins. You commence the typical post-game festivities that Indiana's never been a part of in a situation like this. Just tell me what's going through your mind as all of it happens, because I was just sitting there. I was mind boggled the entire time. I could not believe that that I was watching an Indiana team like get up on the podium, like have an MVP, have, somebody present them with a trophy. Like all of it just seemed like not fake, but I was like, wow, this is actually happening and it's reality. So let me into your brain as it happened.
Yeah, when the game ended, there was a ton of emotions. I obviously love the program a lot, but there's a lot of people that I was with that are still there. And there's just so much time. Like, I've obviously done nothing to make this team good, but I feel a connection to them, like a true connection. And it was just an emotional release. So that happens for about 10 minutes. I'm just overwhelmed, truthfully. Um, and then you kind of come back to, you're watching everything and nobody left. The whole stadium was full for the
Even the Ohio
presentation.
State fans stuck around.
Well, there's a lot of Indiana fans. Let
It
me
was
tell you.
that I can't believe how big of an advantage Indiana had with fans.
Ohio State fans were loud, but they were outnumbered in a major, major way. Um, Stadium was basically full for the entire presentation. Um, I just never wanted to leave. I think I was the last one out of the stadium. I just didn't want to leave. It was such a powerful, fun, unbelievable, I guess is the word, but just an emotional night. I think before the game, when we were just downtown getting ready, there's probably 100, maybe 80 guys that I played with that were downtown going to the game, and we were all just together talking about funny stories, stupid stories, but all centered around how much we cared about what was happening in Indiana. Of course, yeah, it's more fun to win, but we've watched 3-9. We've watched 2-10. We've watched a program absolutely collapse on itself just a short times ago.
My first
From
full season as a fan was a 1-11 season.
Kevin Wilson.
Welcome to the club.
Welcome
that
to it.
was my welcome to the club, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, welcome to the club. But we felt like we were on a trajectory. We collapsed on so we just totally implode as a program. And I would imagine I wasn't the only one emotional when the game ended of those guys. You could feel a different level of pride than I've felt in a long time. It's just so proud to be associated in any capacity with that program and the people that are inside it.
Yeah, it was so many. Obviously, there's not a single way I can relate to any of that on a personal level for me, but I can only imagine. Like, I know people like Justice Ellis and Curtis Rourke, those who were on last year's team that was, just so close, laying the foundation for what ended up happening this year. I'm sure that was very cool for them to see.
Yep.
But just to see Kurt Signetti get up there on the microphone during the trophy presentation, continue to just, be himself, have his moment, if you will. He's had so many moments, but really have his moment of glory, we'll call it that. And then at the same time, realize that this isn't the end. This isn't the pinnacle. It would have been the pinnacle 10 years ago, 15 years ago, before the playoff. We talked about that a few weeks ago, but this isn't it. It's just the beginning. Now you got 3 more games to play. Yep. It's going to be either Oklahoma or Alabama. We mentioned that earlier. On the other side, you've got either Texas Tech, Oregon, or JMU, and then a slew of other contestants on the other half of the bracket. But it's Indiana's, as much as the bettors disagree, it's Indiana's tournament to lose right now, I'll say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a good draw. Winning matters. I would much rather be the 1 seed than the 2 seed, just based on the teams that are there. I'm super excited about the Rose Bowl. I haven't even really passed that in my mind. We'll deal with the next game when we get there. But, you talk about the 2 teams that are playing. I saw Oklahoma in person when they played Tennessee. Similar profile on defense to Ohio State, less talented, but maybe created some chaos. A team that doesn't scare me at all. And then Alabama's Alabama. I've been at war on Twitter with Alabama fans for 2 years. So, as has the entire Indiana Twitterverse. So, getting a lick, well, a beatdown of the Crimson Tide would be therapeutic.
Well, there's so many other things that come along with playing. Not only is it Alabama, but it's Kalen DeBoer. It's Nick Sheridan. It's Kane Womack. I know you don't care about that, but think about it from their perspective. Like they didn't leave the program. Kane Womack and Kalen DeBoer definitely left while things were good. Nick Sheridan, totally different story. But those guys leaving, seeing what happened after they left, and now they're with one of the most elite programs in the country, you're potentially going to face that program that you once worked for in a completely different light. I think it's a hell of a storyline. I'm sure as professionals, they won't be worried about it too much, but it's still cool to think that that's part of the potential matchup if that ends up being who Indiana faces in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, who would have thought that if it is Alabama, taking the head coach job at Alabama would be a step down when you leave Bloomington? Who would have guessed?
Who'd have thunk?
Who would have guessed? It's one program is in better shape than the other, and there's no arguing that. Indiana's in better shape. They're a better team. I wouldn't want to play them.
We'll end on this. If Indiana wins this entire thing, they'll be 16-0, the first team to ever do that. There's never been a 16-0 college football team, FBS level, because last year's first ever 12-team playoff was a one-loss Ohio State team. Of course, they weren't undefeated. The two-loss Ohio State team?
Oregon, Michigan.
They did have 2 losses, didn't they? I forget, sorry, because they didn't have. Okay, yeah, dude, thank you for correcting me on that. You're right. You're dead right on that. Either way, if Indiana gets the job done, where does this team rank as the best college football teams of all time? Is it the best?
What an interesting
or is that? Yeah, this is something we can ponder about for a while, but I wanted to end on that note.
I mean, if records speak, nobody's won 16 games before.
Yeah.
Nobody's beat the teams that Indiana's beat and will have to beat along the way to get to 16-0. It'll be a conversation point. What I'm excited for is there's going to be, even if Indiana does go 16-0, they win it all, there's going to be some people going into next year and be like, wow, they lost a lot of those JMU guys. Rank them 6th.
You know who they're not losing, though? They're not losing Charlie B from Nashville, Tennessee. I mean, unless he transfers out. You never know.
I did hear that call from Gus Johnson.
Oh, I love it. I can't stop saying it now.
Pretty good. His Charlie Becker's probably, for the rest of time, most used GIF in Indiana.
Oh, yeah, the OH bleep you. I mean, I guess I can say it on YouTube, but I'm not going to.
Unbelievable. I think I've sent
puts
that to
it puts the Will Howard cigarette stomp out from last year to shame.
Which was a great move from Will Howard.
It was.
If I was an Ohio State fan, I would have ate that for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And this one is so much more final. It's so much.
It's so
much more lasting. This will last. They will be posting that GIF if we don't all kill each other with nuclear bombs or something in the year 3000. Indiana fans will still be using that GIF for Ohio State. And it's a generational, timeless moment for Charlie Becker. Couldn't happen to a better family, at least if he's as cool as his mom and dad. But just really, really cool moment for him. And yeah, man, we got 3.5 weeks to talk about it. And then probably more after that.
We have time to talk about it, overthink it, second guess it. Honestly, I don't know that I'm going to. We've had confidence in this team really from the get-go. We've had I would say we've had some doubts. Not really. I think it's just what gets planted into our brain from the national media who doubts Indiana's. But we'll continue this conversation in the weeks to come. I'm excited. I think everybody's excited about the prospect of if they can get all the way to January 19th in Miami, Florida. Again, I highly doubt they're going to play your Miami Hurricanes, but that would be something if they get all the way there. We've talked about that scenario. But we'll cross that bridge when it comes.
They won't.
Mitchell,
Miami stinks.
hey, they got anything can happen, right? Mitchell, great talking with you. I'm glad you got to have the experience that you did in Indianapolis this past Saturday. And I'm glad you get to go out west to the Rose Bowl, hopefully for an even better experience.
Yeah, I'll take videos and send them to you. Try to get on the field if I can. We'll see.
Such a fun conversation with Mitchell, as always. I swear we could have talked for much longer, but as I was watching the clock teeter up with him during our discussion, I knew I needed to wrap it up at some point. So, but we'll have plenty of things to discuss over the next few weeks as Indiana prepares for their Rose Bowl matchup against whoever it might be, Oklahoma or Alabama. Will be a very exciting time to see how they play out, how things play out on the field against whoever they end up matching up against. All right. We got to talk a little bit about Indiana basketball. And there's not a lot of, great things to take away from this past week. They got their first loss of the season, unfortunately, against what is perceived to be one of the lesser teams in the Big Ten, against Minnesota. And it felt like, even though it was a road game, that it was likely a gimme, like one that you should have if you're one of the better teams in the Big Ten. And it was really the first real example that we got that Indiana isn't really built for interior success. They got out rebounded by quite a bit by the Golden Gophers, and it was definitely an issue for them, and it's likely going to be an issue that follows them throughout the rest of the season. And Indiana's just going to have to find a way to, not mask it, because you can't really do that, but make up for it. And they're going to be high flying. They're going to be scoring a lot whenever guys like DeVries and Wilkerson are on fire. But that's the thing. They're going to have to be on fire, maybe more so than, the average set of guards, because when you don't have an interior presence, a dominant interior presence, I don't want to make it sound like Reed Bailey is a slouch, but he's definitely not up to the caliber of what Indiana was used to under Trace Jackson Davis, Khalil Ware, and Umar Ballo, that sort of thing. So it's just going to be different, and it's going to take some getting used to, at least from a fan perspective, but also going to have, this is going to be a lot of growing pains when it comes to that side of this Indiana basketball team. And then you fast forward to Saturday afternoon, Louisville, one of the best teams in the country, at least at this point in time. They were the 6th ranked team. They had just come off a loss to Arkansas earlier that week, and they come out 16-0 on Indiana. And I will say those first 4 or 5 minutes, whatever it was of that game, to have that sort of run, I know it's a really good Louisville team. I don't want to take away from what they did, but it was very reminiscent of what we were kind of used to over the last 2 head coaches, Woodson and Archie, just not having a response. And I know that may happen, hopefully on rare occasions, and this is just the first instance. Hopefully it's the only instance. But that was kind of a went through my brain during those, and that may have just been an over exaggeration of being upset about what was going on, that sort of thing. But Indiana did battle. Obviously you can't do this in the grand scheme of things, but if you erase those first few minutes, Indiana did outscore Louisville the rest of the way. But where does that get you? Absolutely nowhere, because those first 5 minutes did absolutely happen in that game. And really, you could just chalk it up to, that was just a fluke few minutes against a team that's really hot. I mean, maybe that's not the best way to describe it, because they were coming off a loss. Maybe they were fiery because they knew they needed a bounce back win in the big way. And so maybe that's what you could, kind of give the credit to them when it comes to how they started the way that they did. But Indiana could have done the same thing. They are coming off a loss as well. However, they are in year 2 of Pat Kelsey, and I know there's a lot of returning guys from last year's team on that squad. So it was definitely a shocker start to the game. I wasn't surprised at the result that Louisville won. I did think the game would have been more competitive, and I guess again, if you erase those 5 minutes, it just never felt like it was. Anytime Indiana made a mini run on Louisville would make a big three, or they would have a good response of their own. And so the result was never really in question, I feel like. And again, hopefully, I do believe that this Indiana team will be fun to watch. And, it's not a national championship team. It's not a Final Four team. It may not even be a top 4 or 5 Big Ten team. But what I do believe at this point in time is that this Indiana team will probably still make the NCAA tournament. And I do believe that they can still do so comfortably. I saw somebody from the Louisville side of things. They had posted something after the game. They said they kind of thought Indiana looked like a 9 seed, but when they posted it, they were kind of saying it as a playful insult. Because of course, when Indiana was in the top 25, that's likely not ever going to be a 9 seed situation when you're in that top 25. But in that 8-9 range, if that's where you start with Darren DeVries, when you look back at where things have been, it's not ideal, but it's definitely a starting point, and it's better than the play-in game. It's better than being a 10 or 11, whatever it might be. So we'll see how things shape up as things continue on. They've got Kentucky this Saturday. They are reeling in a much worse way than Indiana is right now. They've lost every big game that they played in. They just got blown out by Gonzaga. I don't have the score right in front of me, but I think they lost that game by 25 points. And this game is down at Rupp. They are going to be hungry for a big win because they don't have one. And Indiana has, I guess if you put on, hindsight glasses, the big wins that they got, Marquette and Kansas State, don't look as good as they once did initially. But they were, at the time, big wins for Indiana. And I do think if Indiana plays to their strengths, I do think they can go down to Rupp Arena and get a win against a Kentucky team that they have not played in Rupp in a very, very long time. And it would be very satisfying to continue to see Kentucky fans lose their minds over their head coach if they were to be. They would be 5-5, I believe, at that point if they were to lose to Indiana this upcoming weekend. They may have a game in between, but I don't know that 100% off the top of my head. So that's where we stand with Indiana basketball. We'll continue to dive more closely with what they're doing here over the next few weeks. Of course, now that football will be on a long break, we'll be able to keep our eyes more closely on what's going on with Hoosier basketball. And, of course, I'm very excited to see them play against Kentucky for the first time in a while this Saturday. All right, let's go ahead and get into our final segment of the day. And my brain just told me, hey, you haven't talked about the Colts in a while. And I would, and I do need to get back into that, but it's not. I do need to go ahead and kind of wrap this thing up here. It is late, at least in terms of my schedule, if that makes sense. And I didn't have it in my kind of like pre-game, pre-show prep, whatever you want to call it. It's not like it's super. I'm getting too inside baseball here. It's not super extensive, but my brain said, hey, you didn't talk about the Colts. We need to talk about the Colts soon because things have really changed for them in the last couple of weeks, and it's not good. I guess we'll go ahead and mention this real quick while I am spinning my wheels about it. But the Phillip Rivers stuff, because you don't have Daniel Jones, you don't have Riley Leonard, you don't have Anthony Richardson, you're just going to card out old man Phillip Rivers and see what you can do. It's definitely something. I haven't, dug too deep into how that's going to look, but I do want to go ahead and mention that quickly before we check in on women's volleyball and women's basketball. All right. You can also tell my voice is starting to give out. So we'll go ahead and get put the finishing touches on today's show. Indiana volleyball began their NCAA tournament run with 2 sweeps. First over Toledo, 3-0, and then over number 5 Colorado, also 3-0. Those games were in Bloomington. They will face number 1 seed Texas down in Austin this Friday on ESPN. Maybe one of the biggest matches in Indiana volleyball history. If they're able to get that win, it would be incredible for of course, the sport, but of course for Indiana women's volleyball more importantly. So good luck to them as they take on the Longhorns down in Texas. Women's basketball, They took care of Western Michigan on December 3rd, 71-53, and then stepped into conference play for the first time. They lost at Illinois, unfortunately, 78-57. I do believe I saw that was Terry Morin's first conference opening loss since, was it 2019? I may have that year wrong. I may have that stat completely wrong in general, so forgive me if that's incorrect. But unfortunate loss for them. They'll take on Louisiana Monroe on Thursday this week. That'll be on Big Ten Plus. And then Sunday, they'll take on Eastern Michigan. And then they have one more tune-up before they'll step back into conference play later on. All right, that'll do it for today's episode. Appreciate you guys. As always, so excited for Indiana football, even more so than I have been previously, and I'm sure you guys are as well. It's going to be such a fun college football playoff ride over these next several weeks, and hopefully it lasts all the way to January 19th when they play the national championship down in Miami. So until next week, this has been another edition of In Touch with Indiana Sports, powered by thehoosier.com.